"Don't expect a dime from me, you'll never amount to anything," my mother said at my college graduation. The words cut through the applause like a knife through silk. Around us, parents were crying, taking photos, hugging their kids under the burnt orange banners of the University of Texas at Austin. My mother, Linda, adjusted her knockoff designer sunglasses and stepped back like I was contagious. I was still in my cap and gown, still holding my summa cum laude certificate, still the first person in my Houston family to ever graduate from college. And according to the woman who raised me, I was the biggest disappointment she'd ever known. But here's what she didn't know. 5 minutes after she said those words, my phone would ring with a job offer worth $500,000. And the company making that offer? They'd just acquired the bank where my mother worked, the same bank she'd spent years bragging about, the place where she told her coworkers I'd end up begging for a teller job. I wouldn't be begging for anything. I'd be her boss. This is the story of how my mother's cruelty became her own undoing, and how I learned that the best revenge isn't loud. It's inevitable. If you are watching this, kindly comment the city where you are watching from, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new story like this. Now, let's continue. My name is Maya Carter, and the first time my mother told me I was worthless, I was 12 years old. We were sitting in the gym at Pin Oak Middle School in Houston, Texas, watching the annual Science Fair Awards ceremony. I'd spent 3 months building a solar-powered irrigation model using materials I'd scavenged from garage sales and the dollar store. My dad had helped me drill the holes. My teacher said it was the best project she'd seen in 15 years. When they called my name for first place, I looked back at my mother in the bleachers. She was scrolling through her phone. She didn't even clap. On the drive home in her used Honda Civic, I tried to show her the certificate. She glanced at it and shrugged. "Cute," she said. "But are they paying you for it?" I was 12. I didn't understand what she meant. But I would. My mother, Linda Carter, worked as a teller at Lone Star Federal Credit Union, a mid-sized bank with branches all over Houston. She wasn't management. She wasn't even senior staff. But she wore her uniform like it was a Wall Street suit. And she talked about her bank like she owned the place. Money was her religion. Status was her scripture. And I was the child who refused to be baptized. At family gatherings, she'd parade my cousin Kiara around like a trophy. Kiara was studying nursing at Texas Woman's University in Dallas, and according to my mother, she was destined for greatness. My uncle Rob, a corporate lawyer in New York, was the family legend. Every Thanksgiving at my Aunt Denise's house in Dallas, my mother would corner relatives and say the same thing. Kiara's going to make 6 figures as a nurse practitioner. Rob's already making partner. And Maya? Well, she likes computers. Like some basement gamer. She'd laugh. Everyone would laugh. And I'd sit there, 13 years old, staring at my plate of turkey and dressing, wondering why my own mother hated me. I didn't know it then, but that question would follow me for the next decade. Here's what I did know. My mother believed in appearances. She bought knockoff designer purses and told people they were real. She drove a used Lexus she could barely afford and parked it in the front of every family event. She posted photos on Facebook with captions like, "Blessed and highly favored," but behind closed doors, we were 3 months behind on rent. My dad, Marcus, worked at a shipping warehouse near the Port of Houston. He was quiet, steady, the kind of man who fixed things without being asked. He never made a lot of money, but he never pretended to. He was the only person in my house who didn't treat me like a mistake. When I told him I wanted to study computer science, he nodded. "You're smart. Baby girl, you can do anything." My mother overheard and rolled her eyes. "Computer science? You want to be some IT guy fixing printers? That's not a career, Marcus. That's a hobby." I was 15. I decided right then that I would prove her wrong or die trying. High school was supposed to be my escape. It became my battleground. I applied to the University of Texas at Austin during my junior year at Westbury High School in Houston. UT Austin wasn't just a good school. It was the dream. The burnt orange campus, the tech programs, the pipeline to companies in Austin, San Francisco, Seattle. I wanted it so badly I could taste it. I got in. Partial scholarship. But I needed more financial aid. And that meant filling out the FAFSA, the Federal Student Aid application. The problem? I needed my parents' tax information, and my mother refused to hand it over. If you want college so bad, figure it out yourself, she said, sitting at the kitchen table, painting her nails a shade of red that matched her car. I begged. I explained that without the FAFSA, I'd lose thousands in grants and loans. She waved me off like I was selling magazine subscriptions. You're 18 in a few months. You're an adult. Act like one. I stood there in our cramped apartment, the smell of nail polish burning my throat, and I realized something that would shape the rest of my life. My mother wasn't just unsupportive, she was sabotaging me on purpose. So I did what she told me to do. I figured it out myself. I picked up a job at the Target on Bissonnette Street, working evenings and weekends. I added weekend shifts at the Chick-fil-A near the Galleria. I slept 4 hours a night during my senior year, finishing homework in the break room, studying for AP exams on the bus. My teachers asked if I was okay. I lied and said I was fine. I cobbled together tuition with loans, campus work-study programs, and scholarships I applied for in secret. Sitting in the Westbury Public Library after closing shifts, filling out essays on a laptop I'd bought refurbished off eBay, my mother noticed none of it. Or maybe she did, and she just didn't care. At my high school graduation party, hosted at my Aunt Denise's house in Dallas, my mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. Kiara had just announced her acceptance into a nursing program with full funding. Everyone was cheering. My mother looked at me and said, loud enough for my cousins to hear, "Maya's the broke one trying to play college girl. She'll be back by Christmas." I smiled. I thanked her for coming, and I made a promise to myself that I've kept ever since. If I ever succeeded, it would be in spite of her, not because of her, not with her help, in spite of her existence. UT Austin was everything I'd imagined and nothing I was prepared for. The campus was massive, crawling with students who seemed to have their lives figured out. I lived in Jester Dormitory, a concrete tower on the east side of campus that housed 3,000 students and smelled like instant ramen and regret. My roommate was a pre-med student from Plano whose parents sent her care packages every week. I ate dollar menu burgers and studied in the engineering library until they kicked me out at 2 a.m. I loved every second of it. Computer science at UT Austin wasn't a hobby. It was a war. The curriculum was brutal. Data structures, algorithms, systems design. Half my class dropped out by sophomore year. I stayed because I didn't have a choice. Failure meant going home, and going home meant proving my mother right. So I worked. I wrote code until my eyes blurred. I attended hackathons, those weekend coding marathons where students build apps and compete for prizes. I traveled to events in San Francisco and Seattle using scholarship travel stipends, sleeping on floors and airport benches, networking with engineers from companies I'd only read about online. I didn't tell my mother any of this. When she called, which was rare, she'd ask the same question. "You still broke?" "Yeah, Mom. Still broke." Figures. What she didn't know was that during my sophomore year, I joined a startup incubator program that partnered with tech companies in New York and California. I started building a side project, a payments integration app that could streamline transactions for small credit unions and regional banks. It was scrappy, built on borrowed server space, but it worked, and people noticed. By my junior year, engineers from fintech companies were reaching out on LinkedIn, asking about my project. I'd get emails from recruiters in Silicon Valley, New York, Boston. I'd respond between shifts at the campus library, where I worked part-time shelving books. I was exhausted. I was lonely. I was angrier than I'd ever been. But I was building something. And my mother had no idea. The worst part wasn't the work. It wasn't the exhaustion or the ramen or the nights I cried in the Jester dorm bathroom because I didn't think I could make it another semester. The worst part was the hope. The stupid, stubborn hope that one day, my mother would call and ask how I was doing. Really doing. Not the sarcastic version. Not the, "you still broke?" version. Just once. I wanted her to ask if I was okay. She never did. My dad died on a Tuesday in October, 3 weeks into my freshman year. Heart attack. Sudden. Massive. He collapsed in the warehouse parking lot near the Port of Houston, and by the time the paramedics arrived, he was gone. I got the call from my Aunt Denise while I was sitting in an intro to programming lecture. I remember the teaching assistant's voice droning on about loops and conditionals, and then my phone vibrated, and then I was on a Greyhound bus back to Houston, staring out the window at the flat Texas highway, trying to understand how the only person who ever believed in me could just stop existing. The funeral was at a small Baptist church in 3rd Ward. My mother wore all black and cried beautifully for the cameras. Relatives hugged her and told her how strong she was. I stood in the back, numb, watching her perform grief like a rehearsed monologue. After the service, we went back to the apartment. My mother pulled me into the kitchen, away from the relatives picking over casseroles in the living room. Her tears were gone. Her voice was flat. "College was your fantasy, not our responsibility," she said. "Your father's gone. Don't expect a dime from me." I stared at her. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just nodded. A week later, I found out she'd canceled a small savings account my dad had set up for me when I was 10. It wasn't much, maybe $3,000. He'd been putting away $20 a month for years, and he'd told me once, quietly, that it was for emergencies. My mother withdrew it. All of it. She used it as a down payment on a used Lexus. When I confronted her on the phone, she didn't apologize. She didn't even pretend to feel bad. That money was in my name, too. I needed a reliable car. You'll understand when you're a real adult. I hung up. I sat on my dorm room bed, staring at the cinder block wall, and I made a decision that would define the next 3 years of my life. I would never ask her for anything again. Not money, not advice, not love, nothing. And if I ever made it, if I ever became someone, it would be without her. That was the moment I stopped being her daughter and started being a stranger who happened to share her last name. Senior year arrived like a quiet storm. By then, I'd learned how to survive on fumes. I worked 3 part-time jobs, took out loans I'd be paying back for a decade, and coded through nights that bled into mornings. My payments app had caught the attention of a company called Northline Systems, a New York-based fintech firm that specialized in acquisitions and integrations for regional banks. They reached out in February. A recruiter named Daniel sent me a LinkedIn message. Professional, polite, vague. "We've been following your work. Would you be open to a conversation?" I almost ignored it. I'd gotten messages like that before, recruiting spam that led nowhere. But something about this one felt different. So I responded. 3 days later, I was on a Zoom call with their engineering director, a woman named Priya who'd built payment systems for JP Morgan before moving to Northline. She asked me to walk through my app's architecture. I shared my screen, showed her the code, explained how I'd designed it to scale for small institutions with limited IT budgets. She didn't smile much, but at the end of the call she said, "We'd like you to meet the team." The interviews went on for weeks. Panel after panel, coding challenges, system design questions, behavioral rounds where they asked about teamwork and conflict resolution. I did them all between classes, in the library, in the back corner of coffee shops on Guadalupe Street. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell anyone. In April, Daniel called again. "We'd like to move forward. We'll have a formal offer after graduation, but I wanted you to know you're a top candidate. The package will be competitive." I thanked him. I hung up. I sat in my dorm room, staring at the UT Austin pennant on the wall, and for the first time in 4 years, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd made it. But first, I had to survive graduation day. My mother showed up to the ceremony with 2 of her coworkers from Lone Star Federal. I hadn't invited her. She just appeared, wearing a dress she'd bought on clearance at Macy's and those same knockoff sunglasses she wore to every event. Her coworkers, 2 women named Brenda and Sheila, stood beside her in the stands of the Frank Irwin Center, whispering and laughing. When I walked across the stage and they announced my name, Summa cum laude, computer science, Maya Elise Carter. My mother clapped slower than everyone else. Brenda leaned over and said something. My mother nodded and replied, loud enough for the people around her to hear. Pretty GPA. Too bad it won't pay her bills. I walked off the stage. I found her in the crowd afterward, and she was already complaining. About the heat. About the parking. About how long the ceremony took. We walked toward the exit, past families taking photos under the big Longhorn statue, and she turned to me with that look, the one I'd seen 1,000 times, the one that said I was a burden she'd finally get to unload. On your graduation day, don't expect a dime from me. You'll never amount to anything. I stopped walking. The crowd moved around us like water around stones. And then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. New York, NY. Unknown number. For a second, I almost let it go to voicemail. But something in me, some stubborn reflex, made me answer. Hello? Hi. Is this Maya Carter? Yes. This is Daniel from Northline Systems. I'm calling to officially say congratulations. We'd like to offer you a position as lead integration engineer. Your total compensation package is $500,000. Base salary, performance bonus, and equity. The world went silent. I heard the words, but they felt distant, like they were meant for someone else. $500,000. More money than my mother had made in a decade. More than I'd thought possible. And then Daniel said something that stopped my heart. We'd like you to lead our engineering team for a major acquisition we just closed. Lone Star Federal Credit Union in Houston. I believe that's your hometown? I looked up. My mother was 10 feet away. Mid-sentence. Complaining to Brenda about how I'd wasted my tuition on a degree that wouldn't get me a job. I put the call on speaker. Not loud. Just enough. Did you say Lone Star Federal? I asked. My voice steady. Yes, Daniel said. They're a great fit for our portfolio. You'll be overseeing the integration of their legacy systems into our platform. It's a high-visibility role. We're excited to have you. My mother stopped talking. Her head turned slowly, like she was waking from a dream. I held the phone up slightly, just enough for her to see the screen. New York. NY. Active call. Thank you. Daniel, I said. I'm honored. I'll review the offer letter tonight. It's already in your inbox. Welcome to Northline, Maya. You earned this. I hung up. My mother stood frozen, her mouth half open. Brenda and Sheila exchanged glances. I opened my email. There it was. Northline Systems. Subject. Official offer letter, Maya Carter. I turned the screen toward my mother. Not close enough for her to read the details. Just close enough for her to see the logo. The bold text at the top. Total compensation. $500,000. Her face went white. Then red. Then something I'd never seen before. Fear. Maya, she whispered. I didn't mean. You told me not to expect a dime, I said quietly. You were right. I don't need one. I walked past her, past Brenda and Sheila, past the families still celebrating under the burnt orange banners. I walked out of the Frank Irwin Center, out into the Austin heat, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. Behind me, I heard my mother calling my name. I didn't turn around. 3 weeks later, I walked into Lone Star Federal Credit Union's main branch on Westheimer Road in Houston. I wore a tailored navy blazer I'd bought with my signing bonus. My Northline badge hung around my neck on a lanyard. I carried a leather portfolio and a laptop bag, and when I walked through those glass doors, I looked like someone who belonged. My mother was at her teller window, third from the left. She didn't see me at first. She was chatting with a coworker, laughing about something, her hands moving in that animated way she had when she was the center of attention. And then she looked up. Our eyes met. Her smile froze. I didn't smile back. I just walked past her station, toward the back offices, where the branch manager was waiting to escort me to the conference room. The manager, a man named Tom, shook my hand and said, "We're thrilled to have Northline's support. This integration is exactly what we need." I nodded. Professional. Calm. I spread out the materials on the conference table: system audits, performance reports, staffing analyses. Tom sat across from me, and I walked him through the plan. Some branches would be automated. Some positions would be consolidated. Performance reviews and customer complaint records would be factored into staffing decisions. Tom nodded along. He asked good questions. He didn't know that one of those performance files belonged to my mother. But I did. Linda Carter, teller, level 2, 15 years of employment. And according to her file, 7 years of consistent customer complaints, rude behavior, frequent lateness, poor collaboration with team members. I didn't fabricate any of it. I didn't need to. It was all there, documented by her own managers, her own coworkers. Years of mediocrity and entitlement, preserved in black and white. I didn't target her, I just followed the data. 2 weeks later, Northline sent out a corporate memo. Restructuring. Some roles would be eliminated. Others would be reassigned based on performance metrics and operational need. My mother wasn't fired. That would have been too obvious, too cruel. Instead, she was moved to a back-office position, processing loan paperwork, fewer hours, lower pay, no customer interaction. She showed up at my apartment that night. I was unpacking boxes, getting ready to move to New York for my official start date. She pounded on the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I opened it. She stood there, mascara smudged, eyes red. "You did this," she said. "You're in charge there. You can fix this. I'm your mother." I looked at her. I thought about the science fair she ignored, the FAFSA she refused to sign, the savings account she stole, the graduation day insult. "I can't fix your record, Mom," I said quietly. "I didn't write your performance reviews. I didn't log those complaints. You did." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. I reached into a folder on my kitchen counter and pulled out a printed page. A list of community college courses, career counseling resources, free resume workshops. I handed it to her. "If you want to change careers, these might help." She looked at the paper, then at me. Then she threw it on the ground and walked away. I closed the door, I locked it, and I didn't cry. 6 months later, I stood in Northline's glass-walled office on the 40th floor of a building in Midtown Manhattan, looking out over the city. The skyline stretched in every direction, steel and light and endless possibility. Behind me, my team was wrapping up a product demo. We just launched a new integration platform, and 3 more regional banks had signed on. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message from someone I'd gone to UT Austin with. She'd read an article about Northline's acquisitions, saw my name mentioned as the lead engineer. "Your story inspired me," she wrote. "I almost quit my program last year. I didn't, thank you." I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about Maya at 12, winning a science fair her mother didn't care about. Maya at 18, working 3 jobs to pay for a dream her mother called a fantasy. Maya at 23, standing in a graduation cap and gown, hearing the words that should have destroyed her. "Don't expect a dime. You'll never amount to anything." But here's the thing about cruelty. It only works if you believe it. And I stopped believing my mother a long time ago. I didn't destroy her. I didn't need to. She destroyed herself. One bad decision. One customer complaint. One dismissive comment at a time. I just held up a mirror. The real revenge wasn't the demotion or the paycheck or the power. It was proving that her words were never the truth. They were just noise, projection from a woman who spent so much time tearing others down. She never built anything herself. I picked up my phone and sent money to my younger cousin, the one still in high school in Houston, struggling with the same things I did. No strings attached, no lectures, just help. Because the cycle my mother tried to trap me in, it ends with me. I closed my laptop, grabbed my coat, and walked out into the New York evening. The city hummed around me, full of people chasing dreams, building futures, proving doubters wrong. My mother said I'd never amount to anything, and not to expect a dime. She was half right. I didn't need her dime. I built my own fortune. And in doing so, I became everything she said I couldn't be. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to let her define me. And that, more than any paycheck or title or corner office, is the real victory. The one that lasts. The one no one can take away.